Hello, good morning. Welcome to the live show studio panel for Chanel Haute Couture Fall-Winter 2019. This is the first couture show since the death of Karl Lagerfeld. It marks a new era both for the house and for couture in Paris. Lagerfeld stood at the helm of Chanel since 1983 and became very known for his elaborate mise-en-scène at the show, as well as his exquisite craftsmanship. By his side for over 30 years was Virginie Viard. She will now, having taken over at the brand, be the first female at the helm since Gabrielle Chanel herself. Who can forget Lagerfeld's extravagant transformations, from the Eiffel Tower replica of Fall 2017 couture to the life-size dollhouse of Spring-Summer 2016 couture? As studio director of Chanel since 2000, Viard worked very closely with Lagerfeld, to the extent that he once described her as both his right arm and his left. What can we expect from her today? Will she pay homage to Karl? Will we start to see some of her own vision coming through? To discuss exactly this and much more, I have such an illustrious trio of panelists who will now all introduce themselves, starting with you, Maria.
Oh, hello, my name is Maria Kastani. I'm the owner of Kastani and also fashion entrepreneur, and my company is looking after young designers and helping them to become successful brands.
My name is Matthew Needham. I am a fashion designer based in London, and I'm currently studying MA Fashion at Central St Martin's.
Hi, I'm Deborah Brett. I'm a fashion editor and influencer.
Thank you all very much. I'm Rosanna Falconer and I'm guest chair for today. So, to begin, when researching this, as I'm sure all of you found, Viard is very, very rarely interviewed. She's well known for avoiding the spotlight. And this is such a contrast to Karl, who's so known for his quips and his aphorisms and his very unique way of chatting in interview. When asked in 2013 by Singaporean magazine Female whether she could see herself taking over after Karl, she said, "Oh no, never. I don't see myself doing that at all. I hate being in the spotlight. What I love about my job is being a duo with Karl, working with someone that I love." But she has taken to this role so naturally. She has been fully embraced by the president of fashion for Chanel and by the whole team. He says, this is Bruno Pavlovsky, who says that he thinks she's doing an amazing job and he can see her there in the long term. What do the three of you think about her as a fit for the brand?
Should I go first?
Yeah, go first, Maria.
I think it was an excellent choice, absolutely excellent choice. She's been with the house for so many years. She, as you very well said, was like Karl's right and left hand. And she really did not like the spotlight. She's a creator. She loves to create, and she loves to put things together in a very beautiful and very modern way. So in my eyes, it was the way to go forward, and especially from a family that they are very down to earth, the Chanel family. They love tradition, they love values. Who else to put out there other than Lagerfeld's right hand?
Yeah. I think that certainly what's interesting as an indicator of actually who they are and their sense of values. I think Chanel as a brand has a very strong, not just brand aesthetic, but actually a sense of value. Mm-hmm. And that comes through in the way that they treat everyone that works with them as a family. Absolutely. PRs that we've worked with have been there for years since they started out. They started out as little ones, and Virginie, she herself has been there for over 30 years. I mean, actually, I think she joined only when Karl had been designing there for 5 years. Mm-hmm. So she's been with him on that whole journey. And today, in our age, we often start a job knowing that we have to leave. We can't stay at that job forever because they won't let us rise up. We have to move maybe to another magazine, to then become an editor. There's, back in the day when I started in magazines, you would start as an intern and in that place you'd move up and you may even become an editor. Nowadays that just doesn't happen. I think there's something so joyful about having a company that says we're going to nurture you and we're going to help you grow and you're going to help us and we're going to work together. And I think, so giving her that job, I think just underlines their ethics and their morals and their belief in them as a family. I think that's just lovely.
I think for me, there was just no question about who was going to be the creative director. I mean, because I was...
Despite all the speculation in the press.
For sure. Like, I was interning there, I think about 3 years ago now, and being there, the company was nothing like I expected it to be like. I thought it was going to be this big, grand, you know, glass doors opening, champagne, blah, blah. It's nothing like that. It's very, very close-knit, very, very small studio. There are about 25 people in the studio maximum. And seeing Virginie and meeting her, she's lovely, and she is very reserved, but she was so involved with everything, and I had no question that that was going to be the next creative director.
Interesting.
No one told me that, but I just knew it, because you could see how she just understands everything about the brand. She's been there for years, and I don't think the company would, or the family would sort of let anyone external in, and I feel like it has to be part of the family that then takes on the legacy.
It seems that she's like part of the brand's philosophy.
Yeah.
1000%.
As exactly as we've just been talking about, like the values and everything that Chanel is. She's been part of it for so many years. So who else actually to trust with this legacy that Karl has left behind?
And how fantastic that you were right in there for a year and experienced it firsthand.
How was it?
Insane. Amazing. I learnt so much, worked extremely hard. It's not like you'd expect it to be like. But how great that a woman is head of the house again.
Yeah. And I think that
So
says so
important.
much for the first time since Coco herself.
Yes.
Yeah, it's quite something. And I was really thrilled to read that the family and that the company are openly stating that they're pleased with her success. Have you Cruise 2020? The reviews were positive. They weren't groundbreaking. I saw quite a few using the adjective pretty, which
Between here and there.
yeah, I actually thought was a bit dismissive, and I think it justified a lot more than that. I obviously just touching on Cruise 2020, but did you guys have any reflections on that and how that might be brought forward today in couture?
I have to agree with the reviewers. I felt that it was beautiful, but it felt to me a little hesitant in a way. It wasn't going to break new ground, and I didn't feel a very strong personality coming through. But I felt it was very solid, and actually you've got to take those first tentative steps on your own, and they are quite nerve-wracking. And I think actually having seen the couture, I've been really excited by what was presented in Paris, because I think she's really found her voice, actually. I think there's a real quiet confidence to this new collection that's just been unveiled.
I mean, it was an extremely fast turnover when they did the cruise show. And obviously the sort of codes of Karl was still there, because I don't think it's a brand that can just immediately switch, like Louis Vuitton, for example. You know, you can't just switch a creative director immediately. Yeah. And there's so many sort of loyal customers and stuff like that, so you have to be careful. But then
it works as well. I mean, the formula works. It's, you know, it sells very well, as we've seen from their sales figures.
So it does take a season or two. It's not. It does take time to mature.
It's the same on a magazine. When you get a new editor, just because they've started doesn't mean that first issue is actually the issue of the way it's going to be. Often it takes 6 months before you even just to start to see it trickling through, and you get those flavors and that kind of scent.
Sure. Also, I think like the fact that she's the only woman after Coco that she's taking like the helm. How important is this? And it must be nerve-wracking for her as well if she doesn't like to be in the limelight. All the pressure and the fact that she needs to find her space. She needs to understand that.
Also her voice.
For sure, absolutely.
Because she was incredibly important to Karl.
Yes.
And I think so much of her, she would have advised. He takes, I mean, I know how much he relies on his coterie of advisors and aesthetes that he can sort of feed off. But ultimately, it came down to him. So actually, often when I have an assistant who works for me, I know myself as an assistant, you think, I could style that shoot, I could do that. And actually, then when you're put on the spot and you've got to make that executive decision, you're on the line. It's a different
nerve-wracking.
It's really nerve-wracking.
Absolutely,
so
yes.
I think that although she will have imbued so much of the Chanel house and the sensibility of Karl. I can't wait to see her voice become stronger, actually, because I think she's really exciting.
And Matthew, because I'm fascinated by Karl's way of working in that he didn't use mood boards and he sketched so prolifically. That's quite unusual for today. Do you know anything about Virginie's way of working and if that will have changed and if that's distinct?
I don't know much about Virginie's way of working. What I do know is that when I worked in a small group in the studio under Kim Young-sung, who's the most amazing woman. She's the director of textiles.
Right.
And she taught me so much, and she's extremely hardworking. And we used to make planches, which is they're basically mood boards. So Karl would give us a theme of a collection, like data center, for example, and we would research and make small like trinkets and textiles and things that would inspire the collection. And then he would go and he would draw and everything. But it feels to me that the things, like even the cruise show, it felt very much a three-dimensional,
yes.
Whereas the things that Karl was designing, so they were beautiful, but they were very two-dimensional. Maybe because he was drawing them, but even the jackets, for example, in the last collection, the Virginie was making it felt like she was draping it, like we were saying before.
There is volume. There is volume, and there is dimension. Yes.
She knows what it feels like to wear the clothes.
So it's a woman to a woman kind of thing.
Of course, of course. And then the mise en scène, which I've mentioned at the beginning, and I really think that Lagerfeld was a household name, is a household name, and conjures up in many people's minds those hugely extravagant stages like the supermarket with fully Chanel branded products that everyone raided afterwards. Can we?
Mental though. You feel like you can just take them. That's not what?
You cannot have Chanel baked beans.
Crazy.
Is that something that you think will be continued? Is that something that he introduced and is now just an integral part of the house? Or do you think that is something that she will be having her own take on, she might be paring back?
I think she's going to put her own stamp on it in the years to come. Obviously, that was such a strong statement made by Karl, and we see this statement coming through again, But it's a lot more toned down. It feels not so flamboyant anymore. It feels more modern in a way, younger, deeper. She used the library as her reference.
Oh, well, we're moving on to that, Maria.
I feel like, just off what you were saying, I feel like it's not the time and place anymore to be talking about extravagance and luxury in that sense of sort of, amounts. I don't think it's the time. It's not modern, like you were saying. I think, the shows these days we see, they are like very extravagant, different locations and set designs and everything like that, but it's just not the time and place. It's not moving forward. People are thinking about what they're buying, the longevity of the garments, rather than it just being like a show and, the fantasy so much. I feel like we're much more intact with reality and we're moving forward in fashion. I don't know if you guys agree, but...
100%. 100%. I think that it would be wrong of her, actually, to embrace that part of Karl's legacy. I think that was of a moment, and it was a wonderful moment, and it certainly was greatly appreciated, and I think that idea of living vicariously through this escapism, this moment in time, was absolutely divine, sort of a little bit similar
Galliano
to
Galliano. It was just,
also, McQueen shows were the same. Before McQueen passed away, they were these momentous, you never quite knew what he was going to pull out of the bag. And Sarah Burton has still got a flavour of that, but has pared down on that. And I think you're right to touch on the fact that, we, with Brexit, with the upheaval of the Gilets jaunes in France, a lot of political turmoil, a lot of unrest and economical turmoil, and that's reflected, on our streets daily. And I think it will only get worse. And I think that to be quite so ostentatious is maybe not the mood of where we're moving to in the next few years, and for it to kind of speak more about the clothing.
Yeah,
sure.
I think is going to be important.
I was reading about, I think Karl had this dream of recreating the train sets and everything in the restaurant there. I think it's the Gare de Lyon.
Yes, the Gare de Lyon, yes.
I think he had that dream. I think that's why they recreated it.
So that was the set for Cruise?
That's just what I read,
Right.
And maybe moving forward now, this is sort of Virginie's interpretation of that. moving forward.
And touching briefly on the sustainability side of things that you mentioned, the last couture show was the first time that they put out a statement saying, because it was the Mediterranean villa, and they said that all of the materials will be recycled and the water from the swimming pool will be recycled, and they are obviously aware of the new climate in which we are living and working. So yes, I think it's very tied into that.
We'll see moving forward, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we will, exactly. So you're all itching to come onto the show. And we very usefully have been sent a press release by the House. I'm not going to, we all agreed actually it was a very well-written press release.
Very well written.
I think Deborah particularly, having read as many as she has in her time, there's no kind of contradictory words, it's all clear.
I mean, normally it takes quite a skill to navigate a press release to actually figure out what they're telling you. But this was very straightforward and it actually told you, and it was focused and descriptive and helpful.
Good.
Maybe they knew what it was about.
Yeah.
Maybe they knew. It wasn't like you making lots of words up.
I would say it was modern and fresh.
Good. Okay, so I'm just going to read a brief extract. The backdrop to every metamorphosis this season, the Grand Palais transforms into a grand circular library complete with walkways. Arranged like a peaceful living room with its banquettes, wing chairs and coffee tables, its rugs and ornaments, it radiates serenity and is an invitation to experience the calm procured by reading, and I have underlined calm many times. And I think it also something to highlight is that Viard is an eternal book lover. And this is bringing to vision, the library is bringing to life her vision of the Chanel woman. So I think it's time to dive into the show in the nursery. I love this idea that of the calm that is emanates throughout the show this time, how different to the supermarket and the values of that. What were, because I know that just before the panel a lot of you had a quick glance through, what were your first impressions?
So I thought it was very monastic, very linear, very clean, especially with the codes the way it opened the show, which takes us back to calm, monastic, internal.
Definitely, there's a calmness to
peacefulness.
There's a simple lines and the fluidity of them. It's all very pared back. It's all long and lean and chic and elegant. There's nothing overly flamboyant, the way that there's not an overly flamboyant set. It's just very considered pieces that you would keep in your wardrobe for years to come, rather than it being sort of a statement, look at me, couture piece. I thought they were...
Like the calm after the storm, isn't it?
Beautiful.
But there is a bit of a storm, the volume in the sleeves. Look at the volume in the sleeves, which is not, it's not what Chanel was known for. Yes and no, this is a modern sleeve.
Carl did it quite a bit. It was a very, you know what I mean? Like the kind of more modern version.
This feels modern, this feels current.
Well, I think what's interesting about these suits that we're seeing here as well is that idea of you could see them as a whole outfit.
Yes.
But actually a modern woman often doesn't dress that way anymore. It's less about, yes, you might wear that whole outfit, but then actually you can take the jacket with a t-shirt and your jeans and you'd wear it out to lunch with a girlfriend. So I think that it's quite interesting that you could multi-use this and deconstruct it actually more so.
What I also love, I love the styling. I like the way the models look. I like this boyish look, kind of.
Very little makeup.
Very little makeup, very clean face. Quite out there, quite innocent, but again, I'm going to use the word calm all at the same time, and I very much like that. I quite like that.
It's just simply because of that makeup and hair, it's very different to the couture images that we've been confronted with for the last few years, where they were real statement, extravagant looks that were kind of a beauty editor's dream and a Pinterest board's dream. But this lets the clothes do the talking, I suppose.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think it's really actually, if you think of the Chanel woman and the Chanel customer, that's really who this is. You could put any of those women who sit on their front row in the couture into those outfits, and they'd wear that every day in their lives. And that's really, she's providing a service. She's providing these clothes for these women. It's not for the Pinterest and the fashion editors. And I think that's fantastic because. I think plenty of customers will want to buy it.
It's a woman for a woman.
Well, yeah,
It's a woman for a woman.
That's interesting that you say that, because through looking at the front row, not the kind of VIP attendees, but looking at the front row from the last few years, this mix of Russian and Chinese consumers, very well dressed, very well thought through looks. Apparently they have Chanel makeup artists come to their hotel rooms before the show. So fabulous, for the top customers. And there is no denying that they are attracted to the magpie effect of the Chanel pieces and the kind of, I'm thinking the extraordinary floral embroidery or the very statement bag that's probably more something to do with ready to wear, but this is, or for example, the jewels, the costume jewellery for which the brand is so well known. And this does, I mean, we haven't got towards obviously there are many more looks to come. And the press release does still mention that multicoloured embroideries and feathers are reinvented into flowers and palettes in 1,000 shades. So that element will still be there. But I think there is this, particularly in the couture world, the customer does like this more extravagant look, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, I think that's definitely what it's become known for.
It's custom, so you can
absolutely
decide what you want.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's such strong looks, and I love the fact that it's so stripped back. It just feels so fresh.
Right.
And so important that this is the statement that she's making, I think. And it does feel like it is something new, like another voice, and it's not compromising. It feels like something like the pantsuits and stuff, and I love the shirts that are in the later looks. I think we...
These column dresses.
Yeah.
Oh my Lord.
Great, like even without the jewels and everything.
I just think those are so fresh and youthful and still have the Chanel flavour. I mean, the one on the left with the bow.
Yes, absolutely.
When you look at it really, really close up, it's actually sort of made from all these different appliqued and square panels, and it's all layered. It's very, very textured. There's a huge amount of detail on that. It's stunning.
Well, Chanel House, I mean, especially when they do couture, they're very famous for their, obviously, you know, the way they put all the garments together and their technique and the embroidery and they have like great history. So such attention to detail, it's very important to the house.
They bought
investing in all the ateliers.
They bought two
it's like
ateliers.
a showcasing of all of these family members. You know, like all of these embroiderers and the pleaters and all of this.
But I guess even the shoes, they feel different. They're slip-ons or like flat, which means...
And they're still the two-tone.
Yeah, which means feel comfortable, feel yourself.
I love this floral detailing. So there's very, very feminine shoulders on that suit, and then that strict structure. So beautiful.
It just feels really strong
Doesn't
as well.
it? Yeah.
And it feels like such an homage as well to Coco. And there's sort of like 1930s, by the beach, kind of pantsuit, and later with the pajamas and stuff. And it just feels like a real kind of overall homage, I think, and moving forward as well.
I love the green dress.
Yeah,
I love the bow detail. And I love the feather, the single feather earring with the flat shoes. It's the boyish look with a single feather earring, the flat shoes, and the bow.
Yeah.
Obviously, bow is very Chanel.
And bows featured heavily in the cruise collection.
Yes. I find it terribly fresh.
Yeah. Just to bring out what you said earlier about them being a great patron of couture, since 1985 the house has invested and bought several artisanal workshops, including the embroidery house Le Sage, the shoemaker Massaro, the feather designer Le Marrier, and the creators of fabric flowers, Guillet. So they will no doubt continue to work with them, but it probably just won't be, it will be, as we saw just then, a shoulder rather than a full dress.
Well, it might be. I mean, I think that the point is that fashion is always reflecting what's happening right now. And so it can change in 6 months, as it does, and you get a different sentiment. So I think that this is really drawing a line in the sand for her, in a way, of what she's going to do for the house. And I think we are all in agreement how fresh and contemporary and excited we are by what she's produced. And I would imagine that, you know, a lot of these garments, I mean, you really have to, a photo just doesn't do them justice. When you see them up close and you see the actual detail of every hand stitch, and the pleating, like you were saying, and the feathers and the flowers made from feathers, and I mean, it's quite astounding. So I think that she'll be pushing the boundaries of how those houses can work together with her.
Oh, and now that we get later into the show, this is, well, we should definitely have a look at some moving image shortly, but if you could keep scrolling down, these are
I really like that one on the
embroideries
right.
coming out.
The one in the middle or the long one?
The long one on the right, I think it's really
The
cool.
flower detail.
I think it's mixing the tweeds and the sequins.
And look at the silhouette and the one in the middle, the white,
Is it trousers? No, it's not.
It looks like trousers, but actually it's not.
It's a dress.
I mean, beautiful. I mean,
She's sort of like taking time to breathe. It's like, let's just stop and see what we have, and let's just reassess where everything is. That's what it feels like.
I think also what is really coming out here, and what the three of you keep mentioning, they bring out in the press release, a sense of comfort emanates from the silhouettes, inciting us to take time to read in this beautiful library.
Well, I think what's really interesting about looking at these, and I think that's one of the labels that the fashion industry and actually women are really excited about, is Dior. And because when we went to look at the Dior exhibition at the V&A, and you were able to see the male designers that had designed for Dior, and then Maria Grazia and what she had done, and they had done the bar jacket, and it had been sort of reworked by her, but also Ferré and Galliano, and they were all together. I think what really came across to me was how wearable, how everyday, how beautiful and everyday the stuff that Maria Grazia had designed, and how it made me want to buy something that before I had never wanted to even look at a label. It always seemed too fussy and too constrained. And I'm getting exactly that sentiment from this show.
There's a softness.
There's a softness.
There's a softness that comes with it.
And an ease that a modern woman who's running around and lunch and working and children and all these many different facets to our lives now that we have to integrate into one day. There's an ease to these clothes that I find really exciting.
And actually, I really like what you said there, because I think a lot of people might say, oh, well, a couture customer goes from red carpet to driver to shop to lunch. But actually, not necessarily, particularly now the couture customer has got so much younger. And I think it was Lagerfeld who said that couture still needs to be, there needs to be comfort in couture. I think that was in our show notes, and now I'd love to have the source of that quote if you have it. But sorry, what were you going to say?
Well, I think as well, Chanel makes the most money from their couture than any other house, don't they?
Wow.
I think that's...
Do they?
They make money from it, whereas at the other houses, it's sort of like a showcase. But I think as well, it's really... I mean, if you look at Sarah Burton, if you look at Maria Grazia, like these women taking over these big houses that have been dominated by men for so long, and you just see the sort of like freshness and the... You understand. I mean, they understand what it's like to be women and wearing these clothes, and how you would wear them and what you would wear them for, etc., etc. I mean, Maria Grazia just won the is it the Legion d'Honneur? Yeah, yesterday, and it just feels like a time for women designers to be at the pinnacle of these houses and sort of showing the work. You think about like America, and like people all around the world see these shows, and fashion has such an influence in politics and the environmentalism and everything, and it's just. The voices need to be heard in the right way, and the right things need to be said, and I think this is really important.
Well, she's obviously there for a reason. That's why she's been kept at the house. She's absolutely brilliant. But we've all been saying the exact same thing. I find this collection terribly beautiful.
The movement on the amethyst.
Very feminine. There is volume, but a very precise volume, I would say. Very precise volume. There are really great details. I love the sleeves this time round. I very much like the sleeves and the volume on the sleeves. The feathers, the details. It's very playful, very soft, feminine, but very well put together. And strict, but in a feminine way. I find it strict in a feminine way. It's a statement. Really beautiful.
Do you think there are some consumers who will miss the theatrics for which Chanel Couture has become known?
For sure.
Absolutely.
Sure, yes.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Because they were something within the year where if you were a great couture customer and you were going to go to these shows, I mean, to be part of those, to be part of those spectacles, it's a great honor. I mean, it's just such a privilege to experience that. And so I think, you know, even if people say that it's fine that they don't do it anymore, I'm sure they're going to miss it. Because I remember my days going to all the shows and how much I loved all the extravagant shows because it was theatre.
Yeah.
And it's a theatre that you are invited to, and it only happens once. And it's seen, and then it's gone. And so to be part of that moment is really exciting.
I will miss it.
Yeah,
I will.
It's the same discussion as when people say, oh, but you can see things online. You can look at the show. What's the point of travelling to Paris to see the shows? It's not the same.
It's not the same.
There's something, there's a frisson in the air, there's a magic, there's the music, there's the smell. It's so exciting. And to be there waiting for the, you know, the lights to turn on and the women to come out and to be engulfed in that feeling, in that sentiment, because that's the way that designers work. They don't work, like you were saying, just by doing a sketch. It's a 360, it's a mood. They want to conjure all of that up. And so to be within that, in that moment, that theatrics is really exciting. So I think people will miss it quite a lot.
There was a photo of the bride, which I read about it.
the finale.
Yes, and it's dressed in pajamas.
Oh,
How exquisite is that? So this is the new bride.
The bride has a carefree charm.
It's the new bride.
She is She is dressed in pajamas and a robe in a pale pink satin, pleated and embellished with escaping feathers. Wow. I mean, last season we got an embellished swimsuit with a tulle train, which again was very unexpected and modern. And now there's pajamas. It's all
growing up, you know, and I used to spend 8 years old sketching, and I wanted to be a designer, and I would sketch. And my biggest thing was stealing my aunt's Vogue and looking at those bridal. It was always about the bride, you know, what was that wedding dress that they were going to do, and it's such a archaic sort of throwback, but one which I love. And I love that instead of getting rid of it and saying, well, that's not contemporary at all, they've gone, we're going to rework this for the modern bride. And certainly the modern bride nowadays does change about 3 times, and probably might want to come down in pajamas with feathers, you know, the day after.
In the 90s, it was the thing when you were looking at the shows. I remember we were like very young and we were looking at the shows and we couldn't wait to see the bride. Like Christian Lacroix.
His brides were my favorite.
His bride was like, oh dear. So it was all about the bride.
It was.
Jean-Paul Gaultier, like beautiful. And now it's so terribly refreshing and actually quite stunningly beautiful to see a bride wearing her pajamas, which are not pajamas, obviously, because she's so comfortable with the idea of being a bride, with the idea of like not having to be fully made up.
In a meringue.
It's the current times. It's the times we live into. So we're embracing exactly what we've been talking about, embracing the current times.
It's crazy. It makes me think about, you were just saying, like when you're younger and watching the shows and stuff, it makes me think about watching all of these documentaries obsessively of like Carl in the studio. And I remember there was one, I think it was like a BBC documentary, and they were investigating Haute Couture, and they were looking at the journey of this like feathered dress or something that Carl was designing. I think it was the Carousel collection.
Right.
And it's just crazy to like sit here and like watch this and know the progression, because for so long Carl has just been a complete part of the house, and it's just like I've only known that, you know, just growing up and
well,
seeing
Carl
that.
is Carl, and he will be Carl
Always.
forever. And we owe so much to him for what he has created and what he has given us, first and foremost.
But he was a huge believer. He hated the idea of nostalgia, didn't he? So really, this completely fresh take it's certainly, what's the phrase, singing, it would appeal to him, I imagine.
Definitely. I think he would be really encouraging of this. I think he was always looking, he surrounded himself with the new all the time. He always wanted to be inspired.
Like a child, kind of like so obsessed with all these things. And
But also I think Virginie is paying a homage to him by doing what she's doing at the moment. She's not walking away from it. She's keeping all the elements of it. And we've just said he loved new things. He loved the idea of creating something that, it's fresh. And this is what she has done. And also she used the library. She loves books herself, from what we found out. But he was such a bookworm, first and foremost. So if anything, this is a huge homage to him as well. With the library in the background. This is at least what I take from it, in my eyes, my view.
My favourite thing from that press release was that in some of the sequin embroideries, she put his writing.
His writing.
That was beautiful. That's really subtle and just gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah, really nice.
Because actually you mentioned the word homage again, and that's one way of doing it, the library is another. In this collection, do you see more of the homage coming through, or do you side more on the side of her own vision is coming through? And if so, her own vision.
Yeah. I mean, I see her as building on the heritage, and I think creating her own brickwork, her own building, but really building on that foundation of Chanel, the way that Carl did. You looked at what Gabrielle Coco Chanel did, and he took that and took those integral pieces, the tweed, the quilting, the chain link, and then played with that and moved that. And she's doing her own creating of that new house. Still very much in the tradition, but I think her stamp is quite firmly been put on this show, and I'm very excited by that.
I see a combination of both.
Yeah.
I see her, coming through, but I also see her,
and
saying
the respect as well.
Thank you to him, and taking
course.
elements, from what he's taught her all those years, but in her own kind of like more linear way.
Yeah.
So in my eyes, it's a combination of both at the moment, and I don't know where this is going to take her, what she will become of it in the next, few seasons.
I'll be very interested to see
Yes,
Ready to
it would be
Wear.
really nice to
that,
see.
For me, it's really exciting.
Because, in Ready to Wear, do you think that we might see a new take on a bag or one of the iconic accessories from the brand? Do you think she might start putting her stamp down in that clearer way?
Oh, I have no idea what they want to do with the accessories. I mean, obviously their accessories are always, Carl's were very playful.
Yeah.
And they had a lot of humor to them, not always wearable. And so I think it'll be interesting to see where she takes those as well. But I think that I think this is gonna trickle through to the Ready to Wear, and I think it's gonna be really exciting for the customer.
I think it might be two different directions in a way, accessories will, focus on accessories kind of, and the Ready to Wear will take kind of like a different form perhaps. I'm not sure, but obviously there are no bags in the show at all.
I mean, it's a couture show as well, isn't it?
It's a couture show, so yes,
But typically, I think even in couture, Carl used to put little playful accessories.
He did, absolutely, he did. So there is none of those in there at all, apart from the feather earring, which I love.
Yeah, it's very refined.
I think it was a huge pressure because you know that this is a moment in history that you have to live up to at some point. And I feel like it's
Much more than Cruise, right? Because
for
Cruise
sure,
was-
because that's like a transition.
Yes.
Then it just feels like knowing what the people are like, working in the studio and stuff, it just feels like this is an extremely emotional collection, and it had to be. And I think, I don't know, just like hearing things, it feels like there was a big group, and it was a very emotional, community point, if that makes sense.
And so the house summarised the collection as luxurious, calm and voluptuous. My final question to each of you is, how would you summarise the collection?
Calm?
Calm is a good word, but I will use monastically feminine. That would be my...
Mine would be languid elegance.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I want to live up to these.
Are you going to stick to calm?
No, I think it's fresh and it's forward-thinking and important.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, important. What an adjective
Definitely
to end on. Thank you all so much. Thank you. And thank you for joining us to watch the Chanel Couture show.